Did you know that liberal women have a very difficult time taking personal accountability for their problems? Are you also aware that the reason for it is rooted in a Christian worldview of identity associated with morality? I mean, if you're not with us, you have to be wrong, right? Like the LGBTQ, if you don't support trans, then you're transphobe. If you don't support, Black people, then you're a racist. If you don't support women screaming that they've been raped, then you're a rapist. Like, you're terrible. If you're not with us, you're wrong. Sound like Manifest Destiny? Spanish Inquisition? Burning witches at the stake? Sounds like Christian history to me. Definitely sounds like Christian history to me. So today, we're going to do a deep dive. I am Kerry Blaser, reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. I also have a master's degree in East Asian Religious Studies out of UCSB. Religious Studies is a study of history, society, economics, culture, everything. Women's studies as well. So I'm approaching this from my scholarly perspective. So we're going to start with a video from the Whatever podcast showing us this phenomenon, okay, that women have a certain worldview, and if you don't agree, you're just wrong. And how do they stand up for themselves? They attack you with fear, guilt, and shame. So we're also going to get into why that happens and how you, if you are struggling with this challenge, can resolve it. I have a free ebook below that's going to help you do that, and we'll talk more about that later on in the episode. But let's get started with this Whatever podcast. It's such a clear example of when women are confronted with someone else's reality from a different perspective, how quickly they can change, which is wonderful. But they have to see themselves before they can change. And Brian definitely helps them see themselves. He's a master at it. Okay.
If she's going out, it's a deal breaker for me.
Huge red flags.
That for me, it's a deal breaker.
I totally agree.
Why is that a deal breaker? Is it because it makes you insecure?
It has nothing to do with insecurity. This is a dream world hypothetical scenario. Girls really don't be hitting up guys like this. Would you be okay with your long-term monogamous partner going to a nightclub, bar, or party type environment where throughout the course of the night, he's going to get approached, flirted with, and sexually pursued by numerous attractive women, some of which are more attractive than you and could potentially be a better partner than you, and these women are buying him drinks, getting him drunk, and enthusiastically want to sleep with him that night and steal him away from you? You're going to tell me you'd be okay with that?
No, not with that.
I appreciate his lack of talking because his facial expressions, I agree. What? But that's what it takes, is that we have to be able to communicate with each other, to have the discussion. And when women throw up their defenses, insecure, fear, we can't have those discussions. Those discussions are absolutely necessary. I mean, Andrew Huberman talks about in this video that I'll share in a second, how cancel culture, which is, if you're doing something we deem to be wrong, we're going to cancel you, is really not the way to solve this problem. That this problem is really rooted in how our nervous systems are regulated, how our nervous systems are calibrated. And that all stems from our childhood. I mean, I had a traumatic childhood, so my nervous system was calibrated with fear, guilt, and shame. And now that I know that however my nervous system is calibrated is what I attract into my world. But that's all based on an Einstein quote, who said, "The field is the sole governing agency of the particle." The field meaning the energy field, the particle meaning the body. Physicists have proven that we all have energy bodies. And then our energy bodies control our bodies. And that's also reflected in the field of epigenetics, and we'll get into that today. But let's start with that Andrew Huberman quote, video, because I think that he says it really well, and he's such a trusted doctor in neuroscience. Let's start with him. I'm just going to bring that up now.
Of kids, how to teach them to regulate their nervous system so that they recognize that pulse of adrenaline as placing them in a compromised position. Like, we have to leverage the idea that being able.
See, those women felt a pulse of adrenaline, which made them react, because adrenaline sends you into fight or flight. So he's insecure, right? But is a man in reality insecure for not letting his girlfriend dress in sexy clothes, dance on the dance floor with other men with drinks? And women are agreeable, so when they get drunk, more likely to be, it's much easier for a woman to get laid than it is for a man to get laid.
Able to hear and listen hinges on the ability to be calm. So therefore, the ability to be calm is crucial to hearing and listening is crucial to our advancement as individuals and as groups.
Hearing and listening. Cancel culture is so pervasive with liberal women.
The problem is everyone's been trying to do this backwards. They've said we all have to get along. We have to cancel culture. We all have to, listen to one another. And I think, again, we have to start from the inside. We have to teach it physiologically. Now, I don't have a master plan on how to do that, but one of the reasons I'm here and one of the reasons I'm, teaching neuroscience on Instagram and not just in my laboratory is until we can learn to regulate the self, I don't think we're going to get where we want to go as a culture. But
So yes, I agree with Dr. Huberman. We have to learn how to regulate the self. And that's what I've been doing over the past 10 years. I'm 55 now. I started healing from my childhood trauma 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was just as reactive as those women. You're insecure, you're selfish, you're racist. It would just come out of me like, it was a knee-jerk response. But that's the adrenaline, not a healthy, regulated nervous system. That's like the reparenting process that so many people talk about. It's the process of how I recalibrated my nervous system to resonate, meaning be a vibrational match with love, compassion, and enlightenment instead of fear, guilt, and shame. When my nervous system was regulated with fear, guilt, and shame, that's what I attracted into my reality so I could see myself. Wisdom says the universe is a mirror, showing us ourselves in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. Knowledge says the same thing. We attract what we are through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. So let's talk about the energy some more. Einstein, the field is the sole governing agency of the body. And let's let Dr. Joe Dispenza explain that to us a little more deeply before we jump into another video by another doctor. And then we're going to get back into the discussion, because now that you have this perspective, your heart is more open, you have more awareness. We'll be able to go through these other parts of the video with your enhanced perspective. Let me find that one. There he is.
Einstein said the field, the wave, the energy is the sole governing agency of the particle. Energy controls matter. He didn't say particle controls the particle. He said the field controls the particle. If you change the information in the field,
Brian changed the information in their field and they switched. Okay? This is the power of listening and having conversations and not just stopping conversations that trigger people. I had to learn that triggers are my healing friend and not my healing foe. When my emotional pain's at the surface, it's a perfect time to self-reflect. But Christian worldview taught me and was in my subconscious unknowingly that I have an external source of power. And if my external source of power is in control of me, so if I'm, triggered and upset, then I got to complain about my external source of power, which doesn't give me any personal accountability for why I'm upset. But if my source of power is internal, then I can take personal accountability for my problems. Now, the Christian worldview kind of solidified in doctrine in the 4th century in the Council of Nicaea where they finalized that 4 Gospels instead of the 21 would be in the Bible. And those 4 Gospels spoke of external authority, which aligned with their imperial needs of creating nation states and control. The 17 Gospels that spoke of internal authority, that I can talk to God without the church, that all the wisdom and knowledge in my soul is also in the universe, that I can have access to all that, that was shut down, repressed, and burned because it didn't serve their interests. But in doing so, there went personal accountability out the window. So let's get back to Dr. Dispenza.
You change the projection, the particle in three-dimensional reality. This is a holographic universe. So if the quantum field is an invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses, beyond our body, our environment, and time, then the only way we are going to connect to it is take all of our attention off our body, all of our attention off the environment. What's the environment made of? People, objects, things, places, and take all of your attention off of linear time, the predictable future and the familiar past, and find the sweet spot, the generous present moment. That's the unknown. That's the door.
See, that's where Christianity leads us astray as well. As Christians are taught that you do everything in this lifetime for your goal to go to heaven after death. So why would you take your focus off of the outside world and reaching that goal, which is outside of you? But when you teach people to operate based on what's outside of you, that's a very codependent relationship with the world, which we now know is very mentally unhealthy. So let's go on to our next video, which is by Dr. Bruce Lipton, who also uses Einstein's quote, "The field is the sole governing agency of the particle." And he does epigenetics. So his line of science, which is how they make vaccines now, it's everywhere now. Epigenetics means what happens before the genetics kick in. And they found that less than 1% of our diseases are caused by genetics. So what happens before we hit the body? Well, that's the field. That's the soul. So our souls create disease. Our wounds, our emotional pain, our unprocessed emotional pain is what creates disease. And that's evidenced in the American Cancer Societies, that 7 of the 9 factors in cancer and whether they're able to heal are emotional. But let's let Dr. Bruce Lipton talk to us about that. He has an excellent example of how adopted kids develop the same cancer of the family they're adopted into, even though they have no genetic markers for it. Here we go.
Whatever picture you hold in your mind, the brain releases complementary chemistry that matches that picture, and it releases it into the body. And the chemistry of the blood is what controls the genes and the behavior. Children, when adopted into a family where there's cancer running in that family, the adopted child will get the same family cancer. But the point, the adopted child has totally different genetics. What was the point? It was being adopted into a family where the programming of that child is what caused the cancer. It's consciousness who releases the chemistry to the environment that controls the genes. And you can change your consciousness, and you can change your
Brian changed their consciousness, their energy field. We just saw it.
environment. And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, we were programmed to be victims. It turns out we are masters of our genetic activity. And this is a new science called epigenetics. Whatever picture you
So, when I came upon Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he's in my book, and I was lucky enough a couple months ago to be in a small talk with him, about 20 people. And that's when he said the Einstein quote and just lit up. I'm like, ah, and spiritualists always say the 5D, the spiritual world, comes before the 3D. The field, the energy, comes before the physical, right? Like femininity is the emotional, right? So, and masculinity is the physical. A woman drops her handkerchief, she surrenders, so the man can decide how to act, how to climb. That's the way of the world. So let's get into this other video that really starts to do a deep dive on the liberal mindset that, because I identify as a liberal, I'm good. I'm good because I'm a liberal. And this is egoic circular logic that you can't get out of. And Carl Jung calls that the ego. And Carl Jung is all over my book too. And my favorite quote from Carl Jung is, "One does not become enlightened by imagining beings of light, but by making their darkness conscious." Well, we now know the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. So where does the darkness reside? But in the field, in the soul, as a wound, as fear, guilt, and shame. And when you have so much fear, guilt, and shame in your soul, and you're programmed by society, by your family, by everybody, by media, then that's how you calibrate your nervous system for fear, guilt, and shame, and why people get so reactive, because they're constantly triggered, thinking that, throwing them into fight or flight. See how this all works? Okay, so let me pull up this next video of this woman. Oh, right. Carl Jung, I think he was criticizing Jesus as the being of light. Like, if we have an external authority, then we're going to put everything on him. He died for our sins, go to Jesus for forgiveness. But that doesn't change the constitution of our consciousness, of our soul. And that's why early Christians, like the Gospel of Mary, Gospel of Thomas, all spoke of inner authority. In order to expand our emotional range, become more mature, grow and learn from our challenges, we have to take personal accountability. Where does this come from? Well, if it's an external source, I'm not responsible. Also, if it's an external source, then I'm the victim. Right? Just like Dr. Bruce Lipton said. But this commentator does a great job at explaining the liberal mindset, and she gets into Gaza. And my married name was Buzaglo. My ex-husband is Israeli. And my niece was at the music festival that she talks about, and about 10 of her friends were killed in front of her. This is personal to me. Let me back her up.
The Western liberal mind conceives of itself as being good because it's liberal. The Western liberal tells him or herself, I'm a good person because I'm liberal, and I'm liberal because I'm a good person, which means that I believe in things like the brotherhood of man, conscience and compassion, looking after the wretched of the world, the poor and the wretched of the world, standing up against abuses of power. These are all good things, and that's why I'm a liberal. And I'm a liberal because of all these good things. So one of the expressions of my goodness and my liberalism is that I support the Palestinian Arabs, who I think are an oppressed people, and they are oppressed by the Israelis, who have taken their land away from them, and they are oppressing them. Now, every part of that, in my view, is a lie. But put that to one side. This is what the liberal progressive thinks. And the liberal progressive thinks that supporting the Palestinians is therefore something that makes the liberal progressive a good person. October 7 happened, and suddenly you have a situation in which the people that the liberal progressive has supported as being oppressed, and everything they do is a legitimate defense or resistance against oppression, suddenly we can see that those people have turned into the most bloodthirsty savages that could ever be imagined. Not just people who kill, but who slaughter in a sadistic, barbaric, debauched and depraved fashion that people can't imagine ever happening. They have slaughtered, raped, beheaded, tortured, burned alive babies, children, women, elderly men, and others, and in which the people that they have supported as being oppressed and good people because they're victims are these savages. And the people they have represented as oppressors are the victims. They can't have that. Because if they have that, if they admit that that is the case, then their entire worldview is shattered, because the people, the cause they have supported as representing goodness is shown to be evil. And what does that make them? It makes them evil. So they can't have it. So what do? They go to extraordinary lengths to pretend that black is white, that justice is injustice, that oppression is resistance and vice versa.
And I mean, you saw them double down that they went gung ho in support of the Gazans, even though they killed so many Israelis. And then after there was a peace plan and there was immediate video evidence of Hamas executing people in the Gaza Strip, you didn't see any protests against that. You know, the protests just kind of stopped, right? It was like after a little while after that, they just kind of stopped, but you didn't hear them come out and like speak a different worldview. But this kind of either or, one or the other logic is very childish, immature way of thinking. Because we all know humans, we make mistakes, right? But if God is perfect and we're sovereign under God, like he's always in control, then how does that perception of self of like, well, I have to be perfect too, and I can't be wrong, and I can't admit fault because I'm following God, leaves no space for personal accountability. And we don't take personal accountability, then we live in our fear, guilt, and shame. We repress our emotional pain. And then we just keep projecting it onto others and being totally reactive, like we see modern women are today. And this is the problem. They have not been trained based on the Christian worldview how to take personal accountability. Let's listen to the rest of this video.
So they have to represent the Israelis as being at fault. The Israelis are to blame for what's happened. So there is no better way of blaming people than accusing them of the very thing they are the victim of.
Projection.
So you accuse them of genocide. We hear it also regularly. The Israelis are accused of being Nazis.
I mean, they use this word genocide, but they haven't done their research. Modern warfare typically kills 9 civilians to 1 military person, and in Gaza, that ratio is about 3 civilians to 1 military person. So it's far better. And they're not yelling and screaming about things that are happening in other places, right? Why is everyone upset with Israel? Christianity came from there. Judaism came from there. America's talking about, Judeo-Christian values. Women are intuitive, right? A few things to think about.
Same thing. It's not simply an offensive thing. It's a very deliberate thing, because if the Israelis are Nazis, then we are free. We, the liberal West, are free of any kind of guilt or any kind of association with bad things, because they are to blame. They are the people who are bad. And so we are free to continue with our...
They are bad. They're not following, the God in the cult. Christianity is a cult too. Well, our God says that we take over this land, even though Native Americans and buffalo are here, and we're justified in killing 60 million buffalo and like 80 to 90% of the Native American population, because that's God's will. God's will is a very powerful statement that controls millions of people historically. God's will. So God, like the Islam God, his will, the Christian God, the Jewish God, other gods, another place. Which God,
fantasies of us being good people. And I think that's also what lay behind these amazing scenes that we saw on social media of people with their hands tearing down the posters of the hostages. Now you have to ask yourself, what's going through the mind of someone like that? These weren't posters advertising Israel. They weren't advertising the Israeli Defense Forces. They were pictures of babies, of children, of women who had been kidnapped by bloodthirsty monsters, by savage, depraved savages, and were being almost certainly subjected to untold horrors. And yet they were torn down, and the faces of the people tearing them down were contorted very often with rage and hate. And you have to ask yourself, what's going on in the mind of that person? And it seemed to me that they had to literally with their fingernails tear it out of sight. It was something that could not be tolerated to be in existence at all. The very concept of the Israeli babies and children as victims of the people they had been supporting, because it contradicted the narrative on which they had hung their own moral worth. And it seemed to me also they were tearing the Jews out trying to tear the Jewish people completely out of their world, out of their sight, out of their world, out of their minds, out of their thoughts, and out of their consciences. That's to me what it represented. And this whole inversion of genocide thing is part of that. It is not just disgusting, it is not just ridiculous, it's evil. And I think
So she says the inversion of genocide. And what I learned, let's stop the video here. What I learned is that when I act from a wound in my energy field, in my soul, I act from inverted wisdom. And here's a prime example. 8 years ago, after I started healing 10 years ago, I got in an argument with my youngest daughter, and I was wrong and I needed to apologize. But I had a really hard time. I was like blocked and triggered, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? Um, and so I asked my subconscious, which I had learned to do through the healing work I was doing. And I heard was, you are afraid that if you apologize to your loved ones, they will leave you. Like that's not logical. I'm human. I can make mistakes, right? So if I apologize, that's healthy. If I admit fault and change, I'm sorry. I won't talk to you that way again. That was my fault. I won't disrespect you again. Whatever I said. So when I realized, and when I turned my wound into wisdom, I changed my consciousness, I changed my field, then I was able to say, easily let it flow out of me without it being triggered, I'm sorry, and I changed. And now I can apologize, no problem. But my childhood, there was no apologizing in my childhood. My mom was an alcoholic, and she used fear, guilt, and shame to control people because she couldn't be wrong. So we might have time for me to get into something about why it's hard for women to be wrong more than men. But let's do a deep dive into this Christian worldview. I did some ChatGPT and to help us, get a good look at the Christian worldview. And then we'll talk about Carl Jung because, I just love his quote. One does not become enlightened by imagining beings of light, but by making their darkness conscious. And, Christianity did not want people to be enlightened. They wanted people to be servants, to follow the nation state. Okay, so the goal, the intent was not personal sovereignty. It was sovereignty of the country. And so if you want to locate sovereignty outside of an individual, okay, God's a great place. Well, God said. Okay, and now we have the proof. So let me share my ChatGPT screen and we'll look at all that. And I haven't looked into all of this yet, so it'll be kind of new for me too. Okay, so circular moral identity statements like she was talking about. I'm liberal, therefore I am a good person. And I know I'm a good person because I'm liberal. Yeah, it's so how do you break people free from that cycle? And we saw Brian did a great job of it. He confronted them with an obvious different reality. Okay, so they have a direct psychological ancestor in Christian moral structure. Christianity fused identity with moral status. Traditional Christianity taught humans are morally fallen. Only the saved, faithful, orthodox are righteous. Belonging to the correct belief system equals moral safety, right? I'm Christian, so I'm good. I'm good, so I'm Christian. Circular, very immature logic that does not expand our emotional range. It does not lead one to enlightenment, but they did not want people going to enlightenment. Because if people knew how to experience enlightenment and access all the wisdom and knowledge in the universe via their own soul, then what do we need the church for? And how can they have control? How can they create a nation state? So I understand the conundrum. We're still figuring out how to have a healthy nation state, right? So, we're still not there yet. So of course we weren't there in the 4th century. We're still figuring ourselves out. So goodness became not primarily about behavior or truth, about being inside the correct group. So if I'm in the correct group, that's how people take accountability. And so once they're accountable to themselves, like, okay, I'm in the correct group now, I'm accountable. There's no kind of narrative or space for personal accountability to say, well, I have a wound and I'm wrong. And so then you get everyone else is wrong because I'm in the correct group. I'm a modern woman. I don't need a man. I'm in the correct group. Everyone else is wrong. See? So this created a structure. I am good because I believe correctly. I believe correctly because I am good. This is a circular identity-based morality, mental illness. Group membership replaced moral reasoning. Over time, Christianity trained people to evaluate morality like this. The question, is this action good? The old model, is this belief correct? Are you one of us? All outside of yourself, all codependent thinking, which we now know is unhealthy and creates entitlement, like manifest destiny. Let's kill 60 million buffalo so we can kill the Native Americans. Spanish Inquisition. Let's kill people who are saying that inner authority can connect to God. We got to kill those people. Okay. So orthodoxy is virtue and heresy is evil. And, people burned at the stake. I can pull up an example. If we have time at the end, I'll pull up an example of a woman in the 13th century who said that her intuition connected her to God. And she got killed for it. And you can only access God through the church. There's one access point to God. The cross is the only ladder to heaven. But as a reincarnation of Mary Magdalene, I know I'm the only one who has sovereignty over my soul. I'm the only one that can grant me access to heaven, because heaven is located internally and not externally. When I love myself and calibrate my nervous system for love, compassion, and enlightenment, I receive tons of wisdom. That's in my book. That's my free ebook below. All the wisdom about how to self-reflect, how to see yourself, how to admit fault, and learn your lesson. Let it go and move on from there. Modern politics inherited the same structure. So replace Christian, saved, with liberal or conservative. Heretic with racist, fascist, communist, or immoral. Those, for the liberal mind, if you're a fascist, you're racist, you're a transphobe, you don't support the victim, then you're a heretic and you deserve to be killed, justifying the assassination culture we're living in right now, evidenced by Charlie Kirk's assassination. Does Christianity have assassination culture? I have another video on that. I would argue that it does, and that's where it came from. So, we have the government saying we're a Christian nation. Well, what does that mean? And this is that deep dive. I think Christianity has brought great things, but it's also brought problems because no one's perfect, and we're all here to learn and grow. That's why souls incarnate into a body or into a buffalo, to have opportunities for growth, to see ourselves. The universe is a mirror. Right? This is why changing the world is an inside job, like Andrew Huberman spoke about. He didn't use those exact words, but he says we're starting in the wrong place. Canceling things on the outside does not change the inside. And Dr. Joe Dispenza says we live in a holographic universe. Everything is a projection. You heard the journalists say they're projecting their fear, guilt, and shame onto society and then holding other people accountable to their own problems. There's a reason, we resonate with problems in Israel. Christianity and this mindset is what justified the patriarchy. So a lot of women are upset about the suppression of femininity. I'm the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. If anyone knows repression of femininity, it's me. I was turned into a whore in the 6th century, and then in 1969, I was made an apostle. It's like, oh, well, if they're going to be nice to me, I guess I'll come back. I was born in 1970 on June 25th. Direct opposite of December 25th. Okay. So why the brain likes this? Psychologically, this offers certainty, belonging, relief from moral complexity. You don't have to figure it out yourself. Just be a good worker, and that'll get you to heaven after death with no proof. Because the cross is the only ladder to heaven, right? I'm here to teach different. Protection from shame, immunity from self-examination. It replaces the hard work ethics with tribal belonging. It's tribalism. And we've been hearing all over the news about tribal politics. And here we have Carl Jung called this projection of the shadow. Okay. And there's a quote in my book that I can bring it up at the end and show you how I used it. All badness is assigned to the out group, and all goodness is claimed by the in group. which prevents self-reflection. It's exactly what I'm talking about. I love Carl Jung. My maiden name is Swiss German. He's Swiss German. His whole family was psychic. I'm psychic. We have some similarities. So here it is. This way, this worldview prevents self-reflection, because self-reflection would be an opportunity for personal growth. And if I look inside and find answers, why do I need to go to the church for my answers? So no self-reflection. And I wondered, the past 6 months, I've been over on 100 podcasts and went on Christian podcasts. And the Christians hadn't healed. I even met a pastor who is in Afghanistan who's still having significant problems, sleeping, all kinds of problems. But he's a pastor. Doesn't he know how to heal from trauma? Doesn't he know how to transform his wounds into wisdom? Oh, he's in the right group. All that will happen when he gets to heaven, right? That's what he's been taught. So, prevents accountability. There it is, clear as day. Thank you, Carl Jung. We are righteous. So, I've taken accountability by putting myself in the right group. That's the external accountability I was taught how to do. I wasn't taught how to take internal accountability. So, Christian theology added external stakes, heaven and hell, divine endorsement, cosmic certainty. Okay, so let's go down and the next one. How does that worldview impact a person's ability to take personal accountability? Carl Jung already showed us that that is a problem. So in this worldview, who I am, what I believe matters more than what I actually did. So when harm occurs, the mind protects identity first. Instead of I was wrong, it becomes people like me are good, so this must be a misunderstanding. My intentions were good. The other side is worse. I was in a group with other spiritualists and I kept getting cut off, and then they were telling me what to do. And I'm like, you won't stop telling me what to do, and I need you to apologize. Well, my intentions were, I wasn't, I completely incapable of taking personal accountability for their problems. And here's the source. They probably don't call themselves Christians. Accountability becomes a threat to identity, and anything that threatens the identity is not good. Ability becomes a threat to identity. Wow. Like I said, I haven't been through this. Confession becomes impossible without exile. Right? In Catholic, you can confess in the church, but does that always work? I don't know. In identity moral systems, wrongdoing risks expulsion from the good group. Shame is social death. So they use shame. And I'll pull up a woman, a Christian woman, who uses shame, guilt, and fear like none other to attack people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Charlie Kirk. Mistakes are moral contamination. So people learn to rationalize, minimize, deflect, attack accusers. Attack accusers sounds a lot like modern women. Have you watched The View? All they do is attack. You're a racist and you're a transphobe. All they do is this from the Christian worldview. Completely codependent. Change the subject, blame systems or enemies. Not because they are evil, but because their belonging is at stake. Okay? Projection replaces ownership. Carl Jung described this exactly. When people cannot tolerate their own shadow, their own subconscious, their own shame, guilt, and fear, capacity to harm, they project it onto an outgroup. So we are righteous, they are corrupt. But there's the victim mindset. There's the either or. That's the immature thinking. Okay? If something is wrong, it must be them. And I'm going to get into the women right now in femininity. What I learned through my own healing is that as the emotional center of the relationship, I am physiologically designed to communicate my emotions. My nervous system is far more robust than men's nervous system, evidenced by the high infant mortality rate among male infants. Also, when I had nerve problems, I went to a neurologist and he tested my nerves. He said that the amount of frequency that he's putting into my nerves makes men throw up, pass out. Men are designed to disconnect from their emotions, their soul. Our souls communicate via emotions, and be logical, reasonable. But in Christianity, the man is deemed the spiritual lead of the family. Well, souls are connected to the divine. All of our souls are connected through our heart spaces, our heart space. Physicists have proven this. And women's nervous system are designed for the emotional work. The emotional work is the spiritual work. So assigning that work to men is inverted wisdom. There's the inversion. And then that overburdens men and underburdens women and makes them less valuable, which is the patriarchy. You see? So all this comes from that. But because women, we're the emotional center, we channel from God. We know that intuitively. So if I'm the kind of source of the relationship, I'm source. And the men, they provide and protect for their source, their creator. How can I be wrong? I mean, I was wrong. But you see, that intuitive hit is also very difficult for women because I'm source. But what am I source of? I'm a source of integrity, character, morality, wisdom. Wisdom is missing. I mean, I define the patriarchy as like a Boy Scout camporee without women. That's when the fingers get blown off and the fires go and all the problems happen. And because men they're fast, right? And women kind of slow it down, infuse it with wisdom. Is that wise to put the black powder next to the fire? Maybe that's not wise. Okay. This allows okay, so let's keep going. Repentance without truth. In Christian influenced systems, accountability was often replaced with, I confess to being sinful in general. I'm a sinner. Okay, I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. Like that was the witch hunt in the Salem. If you admit that you're a sinner without knowing why, I'm a sinner, I'm wrong. Whether you're wrong or not, that kept you alive. So admitting fault equated with maintaining life. I understand why people admit it to be sinners. This is vague, ritualized guilt, not specific responsibility. Be guilty for being a human. Be guilty for not following what God says. Just be guilty. It avoids naming concrete harm, repairing damage, changing behavior. Okay? So people feel morally cleansed without actually becoming accountable. Lack of accountability. External authority weakens agency. When goodness comes from God, doctrine, ideology, the group, the moral authority lives outside the self. But that was the goal of Christians, which is why they excluded 17 gospels that spoke of inner authority. I mean, Christianity talks about God within. So you see the cognitive dissonance inside the Bible to this day. And this trains obedience, not responsibility, conformity, not conscience. Loyalty, not repair, but that's what they wanted. Christianity wanted control over people's consciousness, to control them, to create nation states, and have a church that supported it. I mean, why did they send the missions? Oh, we're just missionaries. We come from a benevolent God. We're so nice. Oh, don't tell them about the Spanish Inquisition. Don't tell them we killed 3 to 6 million people. Don't tell them. Because we're innocent. Oh, and then we're going to knock at your door because we're so innocent and we're going to help you live. Okay. What real accountability requires and why it's rare. True accountability requires tolerating shame without collapse. Separating I did wrong from I am evil. Staying in relationship after harm. Divorce rate is skyrocketing, right? Repair damage, changing behavior, accepting uncertainty. Identity-based morality makes this feel existentially dangerous. Fight or flight, resulting pattern. Such societies produce many people who are morally certain, emotionally defensive, easily offended, quick to accuse, slow to repair, fragile under criticism, hostile to nuance, and very few who can say calmly, I was wrong, I see what I did, I will make it right. Okay, now I need to bring up the video of the Christian woman because that's exactly her. So let me find it because I didn't have it ready here, but it's here. I've used it a bunch of times. So, but she, let's see, where is it? Just give me a second here. Let me find it. Okay. It's like called Unhinged Woman. Oh, here it is. Okay, great. So I'm going to start it and then, oh, let me find the right spot and then we'll start it. Okay. Let me share. Let me share and let me find the right spot where she starts. Okay, here we go.
There. I'm Zach Costello.
Charlie Kirk, are you out of your mind? You will never believe what I just saw. I was watching the Will Kane show on Friday, and Will Kane was interviewing Charlie Kirk with Turning Point USA. But Charlie Kirk had the audacity to say, no, we shouldn't get involved. He cited our involvement with Libya and with Gaddafi, a terrorist regime and a terrorist state. But he's using that as a comparison to why we shouldn't get involved with Israel in defending Israel against Iran. Charlie, what are you thinking? Ladies and gentlemen, there is a movement. Start watching these talking head shows and look at the youngers, the 30-somethings, the 40-somethings, the isolationists. They're now saying we shouldn't be getting involved in this war. Well, you know what? I don't want to be involved in Russia's war, and I don't want to be involved in Ukraine. But when it comes to Israel, I've read my Bible, and I know I better be, because in Genesis 12:3, God told Abram, I will bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you. And he who ignores you, Israel, I will utterly destroy. He told the prophet Obadiah that in the last days, I think we can all agree we're living in the last days. In the last days, he will wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by Charlie Kirk while their brothers were held in captivity, Israel, and they did nothing. Who agrees with that philosophy? That's Bannon. That's Tucker Carlson, that's Candace Owens, and now it's Charlie Kirk. You know, Charlie, don't use that as an excuse. Don't use a terrorist rogue state in the Middle East as the excuse why we shouldn't stand with Israel and have Israel's back. Are you out of your mind? Don't you know your Bible, Charlie? God told the prophet Obadiah in the last days he would wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by while their brother Jacob, Israel, was held in captivity and they did nothing. Is that what you're going to do, Charlie? You and Tucker and Candace and Steve Bannon, are y'all just going to stand there and let Israel defend herself? Well, don't speak on my behalf. And don't speak on behalf of over 2 billion Christians who agree with me, because you guys are going to sell Israel down the pike. So, ladies and gentlemen, do me a favor. I want to hear your comments below. Please send me your thoughts.
So she did everything we just talked about. Everything she just talked about. Okay, so now I'd like to move on to Dr. Gabor Mate. And he is in my book, and he is a family medicine practitioner who does a lot of work on how childhood trauma impacts adults. He talks about the individuation process. But how can you individuate inside of a Christian family where, you know, the authority is external and you're expected just to serve God? How can you individuate and create a healthy sense, a healthy, secure attachment to self? So let me bring up that part of my book and we can check it out. So here we say Dr. Gabor Mate offers insight into how codependency can develop as a result of childhood trauma. He explains that toddlers naturally begin to individuate, to separate their sense of self from their parents as they explore the world. This is a normal and healthy process, but Christian families don't want them exploring the world because they want them just blindly identifying with this worldview. However, in dysfunctional families, this natural independence is often punished. A lot of punishment in Christianity. Instead of being encouraged to express their authentic selves, these children learn to prioritize appeasing the parents' emotions as a survival mechanism. appease the system, and survive, like we talked about. Same thing. This parent-child dynamic sets the foundation for all future relationships. Children from dysfunctional families often become people pleasers, constantly putting others' needs before their own. And that's what they found, that people pleasers are the ones getting cancer, autoimmune diseases, and there's tons of evidence of this now. Tons. They often do this to the detriment of their emotional and physical well-being. Dr. Mate puts it simply, when people do not know how to say no to others in order to prioritize their own psychological needs, the body will say no for them in the form of disease such as cancer. And there it is. Or in just like Dr. Bruce Lipton showed with the adopted kids. They were adopted into a family that had a lot of emotional problems. So the cancer they got was the same as that family. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle. So when our energy fields are programmed with fear, guilt, and shame, like Christianity does, then that sets us up for disease. So the idea that you have internal sovereignty, which you do, we all, I'm the only person that has sovereignty over my soul. My ebook below will teach you about that. I also, at the end of the video, you'll have a link to my meditation shamanic drumming video, because you're the summary of the person that the 5 people you spend the most time around. And I experience enlightenment all the time. So you saw, like with Brian, when those women came into his energy field, they saw a new perspective. They were more enlightened. Oh, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. They changed quickly because they aligned with his more enlightened perspective. But we can align up or we can align down, like we saw with the adopted kids, who of course have no control who they're going to be adopted by. So who do you want to align with is the question. And I'll leave you there. I'll leave it there. If you want more help from me, you can reach out. I do have client services, but I charge it's $3,500 on my website for a 2-hour session, because really all you need is the ebook below, my meditation shamanic drumming video. You can buy my book on Amazon, My Inner Heroine, Exploring Feminine Pain. I wrote that and published it about 5 months before I accepted that I'm the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. So there's nothing in there about that. That's my next book. But when you spend time in my energy, you'll naturally align with my with the wisdom that I've downloaded into my soul. Okay. Well, thanks so much. Take care. Bye.